Dear friends, my co-chair, President KOHLER, and I are regrettably unable to join you in person today to discuss the special panel's report. We welcome this opportunity to speak to you, the bank's governors, on the special panel's recommendations and key messages, and to highlight the urgency for bold action. We are witnessing major social and economic change across the globe and within Africa, which the African Development Bank must respond to effectively. We urge African leaders to show resolve and capitalize on the continent's demographic dividend, its vast natural resources, its untapped entrepreneurial talent, and the massive global savings pool. The bank has put forward a visionary and ambitious agenda which can help improve African lives. Africa is not a poor continent. It is a wealthy continent. In recent years, economic growth has taken root across much of the region. Yet many African governments are still failing to convert growth into opportunities for their people. We need nothing less than an economic transformation that harnesses growth for the many rather than the few. Ladies and gentlemen, most of Africa's challenges persist not due to lack of knowledge, plans, or technical solutions, but to a lack of political will. A new sense of urgency is now needed among all African leaders to push through the long-discussed transformation. Africa's civil society and the private sector need to challenge leaders to live up to Africa's potential. The private sector can play an instrumental role in Africa's transformation, but only if governments implement the right regulatory policies and create an enabling environment. As our report highlights, the challenge before us requires an openness to constantly take a fresh look at priorities. For the bank to respond effectively to Africa's needs, it must be ambitious and flexible in its own institutional functioning and in scaling up its support to its regional member states. It is our hope that our recommendations and messages will embolden leaders and other stakeholders to enhance the bank's role as Africa's premier financial institution. It is time to implement the transformation that we want to see. Let's now accelerate the pace for change together. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, as my co-chair Koffi ANNAN has rightly underlined, the responsibility for Africa's future lies with its own leaders, its private sector, and its civil society. But we all know that Africa is part of a world economy and a global community. This global community must realize providing jobs and perspectives to the hundreds of millions of African youth is not just an African challenge, it is a global challenge. Therefore, political will and effort are not only required from African leaders, but also the leaders in capitals around the world. The rich and emerging economies, particularly the G20, bear a special responsibility to create the globally enabling environment Africa needs to succeed. This includes a development-friendly global trade regime that offers Africa the chance to diversify their economies, reach bigger markets, and move up in global value chains. It means giving African agricultural products a fair chance to compete on the markets of industrialized countries. And it means getting serious about working on a global financial system which serves the real needs of real people. Isn't it absurd? There are gigantic sums of liquidity straying around the world, desperately looking for return in ever riskier financial products, while in Africa there are infinite opportunities and necessities to invest in the real economy. Africa needs financing for massive job-creating growth. The global savings pool needs long-term investments yielding return. This could be a historic match. We, the special panel for the AFDB, believe that the time has come to make a vision come true. The vision of building solid financial bridges between the old, savings-heavy countries of the North and the young, investment-hungry societies in the South. Realizing this vision might be the last chance in generations to avoid a perfect storm of global inequality, ecological destruction, and a historically large disenfranchised youth population. We have to turn the tide now. Tapping the global savings pool for Africa's growth requires hard work and change everywhere. Hard work and change is needed in Africa, where savings rates need to increase and the private sector needs to be unleashed. Hard work and change is needed in the international regulatory environment, with new de-risking schemes and better incentives for joint ventures between African and foreign companies. Hard work and change is needed in the African Development Bank. We, the panel, believe that the bank is in a unique position to be a driver for positive change in Africa. But it needs the right culture and structure, focusing on becoming a better partner for the private sector. And it needs the resources to do its job, which is why in our report we call for a timely, substantial capital increase for the bank. Having approved the high fives, it is now the task of the shareholders to make sure the bank's financial means match this ambitious agenda. Implementing the high fives requires great efforts from African leaders, the international community, the private sector, and the African Development Bank. If all work together and overcome the many roadblocks, we can fast-track Africa and make this continent a new pole of global economic growth. This is achievable, and nothing less is what our children and grandchildren expect from us. Thank you.